going to move on to our next discussion point before lunch today. A generational shift is taking place on what consumers seek and value. In order to stay relevant in the digital age, companies must react to consumer behavior that has been digitally disrupted by offering personalized experiences and be able to create memorable moments for their customers. According to experts, customers demand three things from great digital experiences: speed, convenience, and consistency. In other words, modern customers demand quick and easy access to information, fast and reliable customer service, and a consistent and seamless experience on each touchpoint they use to interact with a brand. Please welcome to the stage our experts to shed light on these insights. We have Vikram Manjeshwar, the Director of Digital Strategy at Ghassan Aboud Group; Imad Hammad, the founder of carswitch.com; Steve Webster, eCommerce Director at Liwa Trading; Sadeq Abdulrasool, the Chief Digital Officer of homies.me; Nitesh Agarwal, the Regional Head of Middle East Urban Company; Aditya Singh, the Head Jewellery International Business at Titan Company; and our moderator for the session is Amal, Alameh, the Head of Consulting at MEA in India for Euromonitor International. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel and your moderator.
Thank you, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes, I think we can. Thank you, everyone. I'm Amal. I'm the head of consulting at Euromonitor International. We're a research company, and I'm very happy to be moderating this session with this excellent panel. At first, I'll introduce the panelists. Starting from my right, we have Mr. Aditya. Mr. Aditya is from Titan Group, and specifically the head of the jewelry department at Tanishq. And then we have Tarek Barakat. He's the director for marketing and e-commerce at Beside Group. And then we have my longtime friend, Imad Hammad from CarSwitch. Imad founded carswitch.com pre-pandemic in 2016. And then we have Sadeq. Sadeq is the Chief Digital Officer at homies.me. To his right, we have Mr. Nitesh Agarwal. He's the regional head at Urban Company. I'm sure many of us have used Urban Company services. And then we have Steve Webster, who's the e-commerce director at Liwa Trading. And last but not least, we have Mr. Vikram, who's the director for digital strategy at the Ghassan Aboud Group. So today's discussion is going to be about the customer journey and about building a customer-centric culture. And I want to start with that topic. So I want to ask the panelists about the challenges and the excitement in building a customer-centric mindset and culture in your companies. What can you tell me about that?
Should I go first?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so like Amal mentioned that I am from urban company, so a lot of my examples or anecdotes would be from my experience there. But one, it is not an easy task to build an organization which is customer-centric. That mindset takes time. I would say three things to answer your question, Amal. One, a lot of us track these metrics. These are generally things like ratings, NPS, or some form of it. In my view, that is just directional. You know that whether you are improving or not improving. The key thing to track is, do consumers perceive you as actually customer-centric? Most companies I've interacted with, if they go out and ask consumers, is their brand synonymous with customer centricity? I think the answer would be very, very surprising for most brands. It has been for Urban Company many times when we have actually gone out and tested that. Second, I have not come across any leader who ever says that they want to deliver bad experience. Everyone says that they want to deliver great experience, but people often struggle when there's a trade-off between growth, revenue, and customer experience. If you really want to build that mindset in everyone in your team, as leaders, you need to consistently and repeatedly drive that message across with very, very strong trade-offs. I'll give you an example. In Urban Company, For the first 3 years, I built a lead gen business which was non-full stack. We did not control the experience. Till 2018, that was 50% of company's revenue. In 2 quarters, once we realized and did one of these external benchmarkings on experience, in 2 quarters, we shut that business down. 50% of company's revenue. That's putting yourself out there as leaders and saying we will do what is right for the consumers. If you do this consistently over time, your team would follow and they would understand that this company really values consumer experience. The only last thing I will add there, it is still easy to talk consumer experience. It is somewhat easier to at times take these decisions, but it is very difficult to put money where your mouth is. So actually investing in building capabilities, core things which require capital investment, time investment, which can enable you to deliver great experience. Technology, training infrastructure. Urban company today has 500 classrooms globally, 350 trainers on payroll, doing training to deliver great experience. A large part of our technology stack is to control and track what is happening at the consumer's home. This takes years and years of vision and millions of dollars of investment to actually deliver customer centricity. So I think these 3 things, tracking the right metrics, perceived experience versus your internal metrics, and then actually as leaders going out there, taking those hard decisions and investing the money where you actually build capabilities to deliver experience. I think, in my view, that helps pretty much to build a customer-centric team and mindset.
Thank you, Nitesh. Imad?
Yeah, I 100% resonates and it echoes, and I think you said a great point, which is it takes millions of dollars to do this. So I'm the founder of a startup. So CarSwitch, obviously, you have limited resources. A lot of, I think, businesses out there will feel the same way. And so you need to think about how do you bring in customer mindset on a budget, which sometimes you still need to do. So at CarSwitch, one thing that we've done just in terms of pragmatic approaches, we've actually structured our teams around the customer journey. And so what that effectively means is that internally, you have advocates for the customer. You have the customer voices built in within your teams. So for example, CarSwitch is a marketplace for selling used cars. You have buyers, you have sellers, and you have different steps in that journey. Our teams actually mimic a buyer at different steps of the journey. And we encourage in every problem-solving session, in every interaction, that all of our teams participate and contribute to the extent that we can. And as soon as you have your frontline who are interacting with customers day to day, structured around a specific customer in a specific aspect of the journey, you kind of automatically have the customer's voice in there with you. And at least that's how at CarSwitch we've tried to push a customer-centric mindset, amongst other things. But I think that's probably the more interesting bit.
Thank you, Imad. Steve, yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I don't think you need millions of dollars for customer centricity. Certainly, you've never had millions of dollars for customer centricity. The most effective thing, in my experience, has been a video camera and a customer, and walking with them through a journey, whether that's a store, a website, service delivery, and then taking that video back to the business and back to the CEO or the owner of the business. Most of us have experienced HIPPO, highest paid person's opinion, and a lot of businesses are structured around that. But even the most stubborn hippo will change their mind when they're presented with a customer who is having a bad experience. So get out there and talk to the customer, get the evidence, understand the customer's pain points, what delights them, what disappoints them, what scares them, what frustrates them, and bring it back to the business and then tackle it head on. It doesn't need to be millions of dollars. It literally needs to be a video camera and a customer. And with that, you can start to change the culture of the business.
Thank you, Steve. I totally agree on the fact that it doesn't need lots of investment. It does need, though, a change in mindset. And I think when you build that culture, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I'll give the mic next to Vikram.
Sure.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that at grandiose supermarkets where
we have a premium supermarket with a very differentiated offering in terms of the kind of products we put on the shelf, or the engagement that we have in store as far as live cooking is concerned, and interactions between customers and the staff are highlighted to deliver that experience of freshness, sustainability, and differentiation, is that you need to have a very solid training as well as a review system where, for example, at Grandiose, every performance review of the business, be it on a weekly or a daily basis within the store, begins with looking at the customer comments. These are small but effective things that not only signal to the people who are in touch with the customer, but even delivery agents or pickers, and little things that correct, all of the orders, all of the items within the order being sent to the customer. This is all translating as building blocks into better customer experience. So I think while there is a high-level view of looking at the metrics and looking at NPS, changing from good to better to best is a journey of the devil in the details.
Thank you, Vikram. Actually, staying on that topic, and since Grandiose Supermarket is relatively new to the region, you're also working in the FMCG space. I wanted to understand more about the role of the use of big data. When you acquire customers, when you contact customers, and I want to understand your journey specifically within Grandiose Supermarket in this space.
Sure. So just a quick overview of Grandiose Supermarkets to set the context. So we're a little over 30 premium supermarkets within the UAE today. We have our app, and we also deliver through third-party aggregators. The intention and positioning of the supermarket is one of a premium position, high-quality produce, with a lot of live food, fresh food, and fresh produce from across the world. Therefore, it becomes very important for us to be able to mine data to deliver a customer experience both within the store as well as ensuring that the online experience of the customer is consistent with what he comes to store with. So some of the things that we really look at are, for instance, how do we convey that aspect of freshness through personalization? Right? So we have a loyalty program that is the bridge between offline and online, for instance, that allows us to mine the data to say, what are the segments of customers who are now responding to our offering? How do we embed ourselves in the lives of these customers? For example, we see customers who are consistently buying pet food, or they're consistently buying certain herbs. And so you begin to discover the lifestyle of the customer, you become more relevant. So that's part number one. Part number two is there is that offline and online customer that interacts with you, but how do you use it to bring the online customer back to the store? Because our store is a lot about theater and fresh cooking and things like that. So how do you build the store as a community hub? By bringing together customers who have common interests together on this platform. So these are some of the simple use cases where there is a route to happiness for the customer that we pick up, because there are a lot of things that you can do with big data, but all in good time. So what really counts is, are you delivering a simple thing well at scale using a few insights that are really powerful? So that's where we are on our journey.
Thank you. I think we face also a lot of challenges as well in the use of big data. I remember we talked about this yesterday. Tarek, what has been your experience?
I mean, our perspective is probably coming from a small to mid-size company. I think there's a lot of talk about big data and using machine learning, AI, complex CRM platforms that are usually only accessible to large or enterprise-size organizations. And unfortunately, for in our case, we might not have either the financial resources or the human resources to be able to utilize all these tools. So instead, and capturing big data is no longer a challenge. It's more about how to analyze it and react quickly enough to gain from this big data. So our approach has been fewer, bigger, better. So instead of trying to segment customers to 350 segments, instead try to use the touch points that where we have this data, try to narrow it down to a digestible level, and then reacting quickly enough for us to serve those customers in a better way.
Thank you. Sadeq.
Okay, well, I just want to comment back on the supermarket with the use of the data itself. I wouldn't claim that we have reached to the level of the big data, just data, all right? Since that we are having a marketplace and we had the experience of the e-grocery within our solution, I would say one of the things that it helped us to leverage the customer experience quite clearly over the past 3 years was building a predictive model based on the data, based on the behavior, based on, for example, one of the very funny examples that we use to tell inside the organization, we have some sort of sweets we called legemat or gemat, something very sweety, okay? How often ladies in the houses, they will need the butter or the eggs to create the very next one. For example, the eggs every week, but the butter every 2 weeks. So based on that, every time that you are opening the platform or the application, you will see based on the anticipated time that you have consumed the product or not.
Impressive. Okay, I'll make sure I visit. Thank you. Okay, let's stay in the customer acquisition part of the customer journey and raising awareness. I'll direct this question to Tarek. I want to ask about the cost of customer acquisition, cost of getting new customers on board. What are certain approaches that you have been using, and what's successful, maybe what's not successful? And if you can talk a little bit about promotions as well that help you attract and convert customers.
To be honest with you, there's no simple question, and there's not one strategy or one channel that you can say is the hero of acquiring new customers. I think that last click attribution tries to be the superhero, but in reality, it's a very overarching approach. We try to go ahead with an omni-channel approach using multiple channels like search, performance max, display. We also use converting brick and mortar store traffic to e-com, utilizing QR codes on tables, shelves, etc., offering customers other products that might not be in the brick and mortar store. And even if they don't convert during that visit, at least we can guide them down the funnel later on. And that helps us to try to target in different types of the funnel journey the frequency, the content, depending on the event that we're trying to convert, whether it's initiate checkout, purchase, add to cart, etc. And I think this is where storytelling is very important, especially for brands like ours, which are international fashion brands. We can't really have assets that are relevant for our market from international. So instead, this is where using content creators, influencers, publications, etc., to serve our customers better throughout the funnel. Talking about promotions, I would say that the obvious answer here is discounts and promotions. But unfortunately for us, retailing premium brands, promotions and discounts are not a healthy way of promoting. It dilutes brand equity. Now, for high street brands or marketplaces, things like flash sales are very, very successful because they create this sense of urgency that you want to complete the purchase. But for us, this is not something that we can utilize. Instead, we rely on more premium messaging. So it could be GWP. It could be better service. So you can see that delivery, 3-hour delivery is a very popular method. Now, this is not an easy solution for companies with fewer resources. Even us, we don't provide it except in special circumstances. But it's there. For us also, what works is online exclusive collections, so limited edition collections, that could be a good way of doing it. And to be honest with you, the obvious answer is also don't disappoint the customer. Don't display broken sizes too much. Don't try to disappoint the customer in that sense. And payment solutions, there's platforms such as Buy Now, Pay Later, which I'm sure you're going to discuss more in details later, but there are promotions that you can use with the Buy Now, Pay Later platforms beyond the credit cards and the cash on delivery, et cetera.
Thank you. You gave me a lot of points that we can discuss. But I'd like to ask Steve, because you also manage a list of brands or a portfolio of brands. Did you have a similar experience, or was it different?
Yeah, I think what Tarek said is absolutely right. Last click measurement is really the enemy of efficiency. It's very easy to measure your cost per acquisition on the last click, but the customer doesn't exist in one click. I think most of us on the panel here have a mix of online and physical presence, and the customer moves between those channels. They also move between digital channels. So you have to look at all of your marketing activity holistically before you can start to measure a cost per acquisition. I think one of the failings that I see quite regularly is people segregating, or businesses segregating, their digital marketing activity and their offline marketing activity. I was fortunate enough to work in partnership with Google in the UK to launch a program called Store Visits, where we measured the impact of people visiting a website and then going into store and converting. And we were able to prove that actually the return on investment from our digital marketing was 3 times higher when we saw those sales in store. So that's really significant. So you've got to look at your store performance as well as your online performance in terms of the actual acquisition, and you have to look at the holistic marketing activity. It's not easy to do, but avoid looking at the last click as your only measurement.
Thank you.
So I think it's really interesting. So for us, we're obviously in the car space. We've had a slightly different experience where I do think, and it probably differs from sector to sector and industry to industry, but I think the media mix is incredibly important. The cost of acquisition differs depending on the scale of acquisition you're attempting to grab, and the marginal contribution cost changes quite dramatically. At different stages of scale, we found actually sometimes offline advertising reaping a higher return than digital advertising, and of course vice versa. And so I think I just wanted to build in that aspect of the scale at which you're operating will change the answer often. And that is where it's difficult. The answer keeps changing, and you need to keep monitoring these things.
100% agree, and particularly my experience of working with startups and developing brands, you ignore offline advertising at your peril, because when you're trying to scale, brand awareness is one of your key objectives. And traditional media channels are really, really effective at doing that. I couldn't agree more.
And I think that's a great point. We often jump to the flashy. The flashy is new, the digital, big data, AI, and that is incredibly important. But the traditional channels are traditional for a reason. They have their place, and they shouldn't be forgotten either.
We're here today to talk about customer experience, and ultimately what we're just saying now is you have to be where your customer is. So when you're talking about new technology, I think if we were here 12 months ago, everyone would have been asking us what our opinion of the metaverse was and how much we were investing in that. Now, I'm old enough to remember that being Second Life nearly 20 years ago. I didn't invest in it then. I'm not likely to invest in the metaverse until my customers are engaging with it. It's all about customer. Be where your customer is.
Thank you. Staying with the customer, one of the more challenging sectors to keep customers coming, where it requires some investment, is the jewelry business. And I wanted to ask you, Mr. Aditya, about what Steve just mentioned, using the digital platform versus offline stores and the interaction between the two. How do you use your digital platform, specifically that customers of jewelry usually want a more personal experience. They'd like to try the products on. So what have been your challenges there? What have been your successes there as well?
Thanks, Amal. I think you rightly mentioned that a high indulgence category like jewelry, people would want to see the product, touch and feel, and that's the common expectation from a customer. And before coming into how do we do this, let me go back and share a little about the origins of the company itself. So when we started, I think long back as a jewelry company back in India, and today we have 400 plus stores of jewelry, and these are brick and mortar stores. So customer come, feel, touch, feel, and wear the jewelry, and then end up buying that. But we realize that the world is changing around us. So a lot more startups are emerging in the digital space, and we also happen to take stakes in one of these companies called Curating, again originated from India, startup, and they were completely online. And that's where the synergies started to come out. So that was a couple of years back, and between then and now, the difference is that today a significant portion of our revenues come from online platform, and the Curating as a company have started opening, and they are already close to 200 plus stores in the country, physical stores. So both the partners which went into that agreement, both learned from each other. Now why I was bringing this background was, now when we entered and started doing internationalization of our brands, and we chose UAE as the first destination, we realized in UAE, not just the jewelry category or any product category, even the government is so digital savvy. Right? I mean, you talk about all kind of services being available online, and we realized that we have to be leveraging digital much better than probably what we are doing back in India. And so today, for us, the way we look at Omni is that digital is your discovery platform. As one of the co-panelists was mentioning, the importance of storytelling. And when we entered into this market, what we realized is that, so there are some players who are playing on the strength of the number of stores that they have. So every part of the UAE, every part of Dubai, you'll find the stores of certain brands. Certain brands play on, let's say, the legacy that they have been there for more than 100 years. We chose customer experience as a differentiator, saying, yes, we might go slow, but once you become our customer, the experience difference that you will feel, the design difference that you will feel, and that's where the challenge was. So you have to come to the store to feel that difference. So in fact, during the pandemic period, what we did was that you discover the product online. You select, you move certain products to the cart. The customer experience team from the back end will arrange for a video call with the customer at certain appointment slots. Now there is a staff sitting at the other end, and there is a customer sitting at the other end of the pipe. Right? And depending on the choice of the customer, you can put let's say a neckwear on the bust or on an actual physical person. Because it's very important, let's say if it's a neckwear, you have to see the fall of it and not just the design. Everybody's neckline is different, right? Everybody's wrists are different. How is it appearing on a physical person? That has to be seen physically. And if people were not comfortable, let's say for whatever reason, immediately visiting a store, use the video channel. Once you have shortlisted, then through the online channel, through the Omni-enabled e-com, there are all features like Ropis and Bopis, wherein like you can reserve online, pay in the store, you can buy online, pay in the store, or you can get it delivered to your place. All options were kept open. And in addition to that, what we have not started, but the solutions are available in the market, include where you can, on a digital robotic image, you can place the jewelry and see. But I personally am not a big fan, because I believe jewelry has to be seen on an actual person and not on a robot.
Thank you. So you seamlessly kept the customer at the heart of the process. Absolutely. You didn't differentiate between the digital platform and the physical store. And that goes a long way in keeping the customer engaged and helping them feel trust in the service in general.
Absolutely. Any high indulgence category is always about trust on the player. Thanks.
Thank you. Staying on that topic of trust, I want to direct the next question to Imad. Your platform was sort of pioneering in 2016. It was only digital, and the focus is the sales of cars. And I know when I buy, or when I bought my car, I had to check, I had to trust the service provider, I had to check all elements of the car, and I needed human interaction. So what were the challenges in overcoming that factor of, I'm not seeing the person right now, this is an online store in quotations. What were your challenges there, and how did you overcome them?
It's a great question. I think there's still challenges we're trying to overcome, but I guess with any online transaction, there will be several barriers for a buyer going from awareness all the way through to purchase. Trust is, of course, one of the top ones, particularly if we talk about high-value transactions. I think the way we approached it was really going through the customer journey. Ultimately, there are numerous factors that somebody is considering, and you need to understand each one of those factors and try to tackle it somehow. So as an example, within cars, the very first step, if I simplify things, right, a buyer is looking for a car that they like, that serves their needs. After that, it's a car that they can afford. After that, it's probably some help, assistance in actually taking ownership, and then perhaps maintenance, service, etc. So if you want to shift that journey online, you almost need to break down each piece of it. At the very beginning, if it's a car that they like, we determine the photographs need to be great. The features of the car need to be verified and validated. And perhaps even the quality of the vehicle, because it's a used car in our case, needs to be validated and displayed. So the way we set up our business model is we have inspectors on staff that visit every car, inspect it, photograph it, validate it, etc., to post it on the site. And that was a solution that we employed to tackle that specific problem in the customer journey. I'm sure there's other solutions and there's other companies trying to tackle it in that way. But similarly, can they afford? Well, we determine that people negotiate, and we need to build in negotiation into the app. And we have a whole feature set around that in the app and how it works. On the process, we set people up that will help you through the process, how to get finance, insurance, transfer, and so on and so forth. And so I think what we did, and of course within that process, one of the biggest things is people still want to see the car, just like they probably still want to see the jewelry at some point. And so you have to build that into your customer journey. We've done it slightly in an omni-channel approach. You can see the car. We'll go ahead and take you and see it. And so I think it's not about necessarily forcing an online transaction. It's about creating convenience and a better experience for your customers. And customers want certain things. Sometimes it's better not to fight it, but actually give it. And they'll appreciate that more. And then you gradually shift them towards a different way of experiencing the product as they build trust for your brand. So right now, about 15 to 20% of our monthly sales are online, sight unseen. But that's because people have actually interacted with us a couple of times. They built that trust. They have that comfort. And so, you can try to force things. That's difficult. It's doable, but it is difficult. If you're Apple, you might get away with it. For Car Switch, we've tried to kind of hold hands and walk along the journey. And that's at least how we've approached it so far.
Thank you. And I think when I went through your website, one of the things that drew me was how transparent the whole process was. And I think storytelling, like Tarek mentioned earlier, is a big part of building that trust. Okay, let's veer a little bit to talk about general brand equity. And I want to address this question to Steve and Tarek as well, because they handle multiple brands. And I want to understand, how do you keep the customer as your focus when you're handling multiple brands catering for separate customer groups?
Great question. How do we do it? Well, we run around like headless chickens a lot, trying to work out what our customer expectation is. Liwa operates about 11 brands in the region. That's a mix of apparel and homewares. Some of those are franchise, some of those are own brand. Our probably most prominent brands are Licenza and Gant. So for those two brands, we're very fortunate that we have a great working relationship with the host brand. There's a lot of brand equity, there's a lot of provenance with those brands. So we tailor our experiences to match the brand positioning, whether that's our store, our website, our after service, so last mile delivery as an example. We pitch it at a level that the brand pitches itself globally. For our own brands, particularly the brands that we're developing, we have one of the UAE's only nationally developed lingerie brands, Isla and Evie, with our first store in Dubai Hills. What we're trying to do there is be true to the brand story. So when we sat down and we started scoping this brand as a proposition, we wrote our brand story and we put the customer, our target customer, at the heart of that. So our store experience, our digital presence, our digital marketing activity, and our last mile activity and customer service all goes back to that brand story. And we try and review each of those customer touch points at least once a quarter to see how far we are moving away from that brand story. And as I said earlier, getting the customer's feedback and engagement through that process is absolutely fundamental. We need to understand the customer's expectations for each of the brands that we operate and tailor the experience accordingly.
Thank you. Tarek.
I would reiterate what Steve just mentioned. I mean, we try to put the consumer's hat on, and the consumer is not shopping with Beside Group or Liwa. They're shopping with Diesel or Frapperi or Scotch and Soda, and therefore, just like we differentiate in our stores. So, for example, in Diesel and Frapperi, we have our colleagues are with tattoos, piercings, they represent the brand DNA. In Pinko, you might have a little bit more elevated luxury, female-oriented store staff. The same thing is applicable for e-commerce. So instead of trying to build a Diesel UAE or Beside Group website, what we've done is we build our e-com websites on the global domains, because the consumer is shopping with Diesel. They're shopping with Scotch and Soda. They're not shopping with us. And therefore, we try as much as possible to manage consumer expectations, but also get the best learnings from other brands when it comes to customer service and any kind of pain points, and improve on what we already have or what the brand already has. But yeah, just try to match consumer expectations or exceed it in that front.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to a topic that's of interest to many of us here. It's a hot topic right now, and that's related to payments. And I know from my own experience as a shopper that the payment process itself either makes it or breaks it. And I wanted to ask you, Sadeq, about the learnings when it comes to designing your payment system and choosing your payments partner. Because that experience needs to be seamless to the customer, and you want to help convert those people who are on your website to buyers.
Sure. Since that's our subject right now is about customer experience, so I'll try to build also my answer based on the customer experience. Everyone know that payment is a very serious matter. You can play with many things, but not with payments, because it's either take it or leave it. So I'll try at least to build or to establish the answer based on 3 major points. First of all is the integration. How likely you have integrated your payment scheme with like credit card, debit card, and the new applications that's stepping in, such as Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, anything else Pay, and the wallets. I'll give you one example that we have seen I guess last year. We were having all the options, and we are clearly seeing from each payment method how much of our customers are paying off. But since there's like some of them, they are having like a top up of the commissions they are taking also. So we decided, okay, let's close one of the X way pays, and most probably it will be diverted for another payment. Everybody nowadays, they have definitely debit, credit, and so. And guess what? The day that we have closed that payment option, we have lost approximately 16% of our customers. They didn't come back. So they didn't move for another payment. They just vanished. And this is very important because as we are thinking right now from the customer point of view, they have a preferences for the payment options. Find out what are these preferences. The second point is the think and the usage of the emerging technologies. Nowadays, perhaps you have heard about the open banking or the buy now, pay later, and many other options. But when it comes really for not how the features from your point of view, but the benefits for the customers. Because at the end of the day, you might give them like, seriously, it happens with one of my friends that they are having e-commerce. They had an 11 option payments for the customers. And guess what? It's just a distraction. It's not an option, it's a distraction, okay? So when it comes for picking, for example, the best option of, in Bahrain, for example, I am from Bahrain, and we have adopted regulations when it comes for the cryptocurrencies. We were the very first in the whole MENA region to adopt the cryptocurrency, and we had established also alongside with Binance, we have in Bahrain 3 crypto firms. We have nowadays payments for real estate, e-commerces, grocery, your fuel, you can pay with an actual cryptocurrencies, not with your fiat. But at the same time, how do you present this for the end users? It's not just buy now with Bitcoin or buy now with Ethereum or buy. How do you present what is the added value for themselves alongside with the reward schemes and applications? The last thing is security. Bear in your mind, nowadays the security matters is rising. Just yesterday, I was in JISIC, just behind us, and you wouldn't believe if they have told you, like year over year, the security breaches and violations in the payment specifically, it gets raised more than 60%. At the same time that everybody is implementing the 2 authentication steps, the multi-authenticator, the facial authentication, the voice, all of these matters, yet the violations and the breaches in the payments are increasing. So how do you secure yourself? Nobody will think like the security is supposed to be in the payment gateway side. They will think, okay, it has been breached from homies, so they will leave me, they will leave you, okay? So all of these 3 factors, it will give you later on the clear options about whom you shall pick to conduct your payments for your solution.
Agreed. We've done a recent study, actually last year, and we saw that security is one of the biggest factors in people choosing to pay through a certain method. We also saw actually that debit card users, for example, are not as open to paying through these new payment methods and using fintech companies like BNPL companies. Now, as part of that study also, which was surprising, we saw that usually the customers who are on the higher end of the income range were more comfortable, not just more comfortable, but also more willing to use BNPL products, for example, which is surprising. And I wanted to extend the question to the rest of the panel because we have people shopping at grocery stores, online or offline. We have products that are more expensive, whether they're in the apparel, jewelry, cars. So what has been your experience when it comes to your payment system, and how can you tell us some interesting stories about how it had helped you gain customers or lose them?
Sure. I think a very, very important question for us. And then let me start by sharing that typically in any jewelry store, when a customer comes, they end up, depending on the value and the number of products they are looking for, they end up spending anywhere between, so for us, an average customer spending time inside the store is 1.5 hours. And it can vary anywhere between 45 minutes to 2.5 hours. Now, the funny part of this is, now they have selected the product. Now you need to check out at the billing. That process, every customer wants should happen within 2 minutes. Right? That's the expectation. Now, as a retailer, we have to live up to that expectation. And this particular, the payment process per se, has been our perennial issue. So, typically, whenever any, let's say, a new IT person joins in, or we are trying to set up a new IT system, or even a payment system, that's our first focus. How do we keep reducing this? And slowly, over the years, we have made significant improvements in that. In jewelry, there is an additional layer. So while we discussed about various payment options, there is an additional payment options in jewelry. You can bring back your old jewelry. And let's say if it is of a gold, it can get valued. And so there is a process behind it. So now the processes may not necessarily be the company's processes. Every country lay down government-led processes, because bullion is a product which is traded across the world. How do you, when somebody comes back with their old jewelry, who do you inform? How do you inform in the government system? Only when their permission is there, then you can go forward. But will the customer wait all that long? They won't. But is this a significant channel? It's a very significant channel. It's almost 20% of sale come through this channel. People coming back with their old jewelry, probably a generational heirloom getting passed, and they want to trade it out to a new modern looking product. So these are challenges, these are real world challenges of payments, continuous focus as to how to bring that down. Now we have reached a stage that you don't even need to go to a cash counter. You have spent, let's say, 2 hours with a certain staff who's helping you out. Then and there, sitting there, you can complete your transaction. So that's the journey path we are taking.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask Imad now, because it's sort of similar. We expect that we can bring in our old cars to pay for new ones. Well, I know it's in the used cars business, but how was your experience so far? And did you think about this?
I don't think I'm not particularly proud of our own efforts when it comes to payments. I don't think we've worked hard enough. I think the reality is it's hard to argue with these things. The more payment methods done with a better UI and better UX is, of course, a better answer. But you're making trade-offs. You have a very tight product roadmap. You have 100 things that you're trying to deliver and so on. So our initial mindset was, if you're going to buy a car, you're probably not going to really care about the payment methods anyways, because you're going to have to do a wire transfer or a cash transaction. You're not going to put a credit card to buy a car. We were surprised. Some people will put cars on credit cards and so on. So I think the right answer is have as many payment gateways or payment methods available in an intuitive way. But at the same time, I think if your overall experience is stellar, and if you have the product that the customer wants, they'll find a way to pay for it as well. So it's a little bit of a balance. The right answer is, of course, do it. But then there are trade-offs, so how do you prioritize?
Of course. Because different payment providers cater for different types of companies as well, SMBs, high volume, low volume, etc. Okay, thank you. I think we're close to the end of our session. I have one more question to the panelists, specifically Nitesh. Now that the customer has interacted with the brand, they bought the service, they have a complaint now. And I want to ask about the pitfalls related to how we measure customer satisfaction in after sales.
I think, by the way, I couldn't agree with the importance of this question more. Every time I'm on a call with my team who manage the post-service customer experience. All their metrics and everything they show is always going upwards. And every time I'm in a conversation with a customer, their view of the world is very, very different. And I will tell you, in my view, quickly, three main pitfalls. One, as companies, we often look at post-sales support as a cost center. That in itself is a big, big pitfall. The moment we switch the mindset or the way we look at it to a mindset of how can this be a growth driver in terms of driving loyalty of consumers, in terms of it being a feed into what you design and deliver for consumers, it can be a great growth driver. Just to give you an example, when I say it can be a growth driver, I fundamentally believe, and this is again controversial and Steve may have a view there, but I believe consumers are forgiving. They are understanding. They understand that companies will make mistakes, but they are not willing to do that repeatedly. So every time a customer comes back for post-service support, they are actually giving you an opportunity to turn them from one-time transactors to lifelong loyalists. And that's the role of post-service support. As long as you can get that mindset in your team versus it being a cost center, a lot can change. The only other small point, mostly I have seen the metrics or the way we evaluate performance of post-sale support. Those metrics are very, very self-serving, defined by that function itself, and they are not at all business-centric. They talk about contact rates, they talk about resolution rates. Resolution rate in urban company till a point of time we were measuring on connected tickets. Customer satisfaction we were measuring on connected customers. What about the customers we could never connect with and they tried to connect with us, right? So take a very business-centric view. For example, one of the metrics that we are now tracking is that the loyalty or LTV of consumers who have reached out to us post-service has to be higher than the LTV of customers who have never had an issue with us. And that's the power and the role that this function can play. And these are the pitfalls I hope in retrospect we identified much sooner in our journey.
Thank you. We were talking about this yesterday as well, and one of the points we were talking about was how we not just connect with the customers when they reach out to us, but also how we measure their satisfaction in terms of the after-sales process. And Steve, you had some really good inputs on this. Can you elaborate, please?
Sure. Firstly, I should say I don't disagree. If the customer contacts you with an issue, that is absolutely the right time to turn them into an advocate. The points I was mentioning yesterday was really you need to put customer experience, customer service at the center of the business. And the way to do that is to empower that customer service function to hold the rest of the business accountable for the customer experience. So you need to be able to measure the customer experience through the full customer journey. And the customer journey doesn't stop when the product or service is delivered to the customer. The customer experience never ends for as long as the customer has the product. So you need to contact the customer, you need to get their feedback when they have lived with your product or your service for a period of time. For us as an apparel retailer, we will contact the customer maybe a week to 10 days after they've had the product delivered to them. In previous businesses where I've worked, where we were a service provider, we would contact the customer maybe 3 months after the service. And then we would measure how their satisfaction had changed from the point of installation to that 3-month period. So it's when the customer's living and breathing with the product or your service after you've delivered it that you get the most accurate measure of their satisfaction with you.
Thank you. All right, I think we're at time. I just want to ask everyone, all the panelists, in a few seconds to tell our audience your one thought, one best practice when it comes to keeping the customer as a focus for your efforts. Aditya?
So I'll keep it short. So I personally view customer experience as a piece at 5 stages. So first being just warranty services. Second is you reach the customer complaint addressal. Third, when you, across your network, you provide same level of service. Fourth is same level of service, but personalized to each customer or segmented for each segment. But your final level where I think everybody should try and reach is care, where customer starts caring for you as a company or as a brand. If you are able to reach there, I think that's when we achieve a real task.
Thank you.
I would just say, reiterate, fewer, bigger, better. If you have limited resources, just try to get a few things right very, very well.
I'd have a similar thought. Try new things often, monitor, and rinse and repeat.
Thank you.
Okay, for me, distinguish your customer experience and your brand experience, because I guess everyone right now focusing on your customer experience, which is mostly, it is a short term, but how about your strategic long term? How does it match with the experience that they are getting? At least one thing, if you are having a values for your company or your brand, let's assume honesty. Does it reflect on the customer experience or not? So, thank you.
Just one point, build something that customers love even if it's not scalable. Scalability is a solved problem. And this is borrowed, by the way, not original.
I think there's been some great points just made. What I'd suggest is not only talk to your customers, but talk to the people who aren't your customers. Why aren't they your customer? Exit surveys on websites, exit surveys on stores. Understand the barriers to the people who are aware and engaged with you to becoming a customer, and then focus on fixing those. You've already spent the money, you've already invested in the awareness and the consideration. Focus some of your effort on conversion by understanding the barriers to interaction.
Thank you.
I think two things that come to mind. One, don't try and change customer behavior, aim to simplify it. Second thing is that reliability is something that cannot be stressed enough. Being reliable in itself is half the battle won as far as customer experience is concerned. So reliability and consistency.
Thank you, everyone. I think I will add my 2 cents here. For me, it's a genuine experience as a customer, not as a provider. But I think having a genuine experience, like you said, reliability, trust, and feeling that I'm catered for is a big part of me giving my loyalty to the brand. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for listening.